Hello and welcome to our deck tech videos, deck profile videos, whatever you want to call them. We're going over the new decks that are coming out for VERTEX DIVA, and we probably should get a hold of X, which is going to be a very, very strong deck in the future and for quite a while. If you've ever played Hirana, it plays quite a bit like X, although X is potentially a little bit more aggressive with a couple more options to do removal, because it is inevitably a red-black deck. X is one of those ones that you use in a team, unlike Deus, which is kind of more often done as a dream team. X has got so many good synergies that work with specifically this red center, that you want to usually keep it as a team build. But let's talk about this from the very, very beginning. What is X? X is a hyper aggro center that rewards you for just punching fast and punching hard, burning through your hand to try to get the victory as soon as possible. It is the definition of hyper aggro. Arguably, Hirana could jump between hyper aggro and non-hyper aggro, like grind a little bit, whereas X does a more better job just blowing through the opponent and trying to get a win as quick as possible. As always with the DXM centers, we need to talk about multiple cards that are also sort of attached to the center, which is the level 1 and the level 2, which have abilities as well when you use it for a soul. It should be noted right away that you can use your level 0 as a soul as well, it just won't have any abilities. But that is something that you might want to consider doing. So, let's talk about it. X level 3 is a red center, which innately means that it's going to be somewhat aggressive, right? There's not really any defensive red decks in existence. Where its abilities, whenever a soul attached to a signet on your field attacks, whenever a soul is attached to a signet on your field, you get to draw a card and discard a card. So that's good because you don't need to attack in order to trigger it, so you can always get access to at least some amount of filtering. Towel often gets you the draw 3, discard 3, and this does this naturally with a bunch of other upsides, so it is a very, very good center. Whenever you see a lot of text like this, it's always seemingly maybe it's going to be good, or it's going to be terrible. It's one of those two. Its action ability is allowing you to grab a card from underneath this Elrig and attach it to your Signy as a soul. You can do this as many times as you'd like, and you can spread it out as much as you'd like. Its once-a-game ability is that you can exceed 3, which means that you won't be using any of the things that are souls here, but you'll be using your assist Elrigs to exceed 3 often. You can remove a piece from your Elrig deck, and if you do, you can choose up to 2 target red. Okay, so it's forcing you into mostly a red build. Signy, gain Assassin until end of turn. Now, this is quite good, because if you look at what X2 does, which is when it attacks, it can vanish a Signy with power 12,000 or less. You have, basically, you can read this as deal 3 damage, right? Or at least threaten dealing 3 damage. Of course, it can be prevented. But the fact that you have a red center that is saying I can deal upwards to 3 damage, or threaten that 3 damage, is very, very strong, right? Hirana innately threatens 2 damage because of its ability, and also because it can get double crush on a piece. This threatens 3 damage on its own without having to consider the piece, so it is very, very good if you're pushing for damage. We can talk about the other X1, which is whenever it attacks, you can enter charge 1, or draw a card. You're often probably going to be drawing a card. You're probably going to be trying to just get more gas for the long game, and X1 is probably the less important one to use. But you might consider enter charging if you just need more power to just lane open. And this deck has quite a packed to the gills with lane opening options. It is red and it is black, which means that both of those things come with lane opening options. Black gives you a little bit of defense in terms of being able to recur things out of your trash or put up some kind of defensive capabilities on your Elrigs, so you're not completely dead in the water to other hyper aggro decks, and that gives this deck a little bit more versatility than the average deck. For example, Curana does not do very well in terms of defense. It can put out a lot of offense, but X3 will be able to put out quite a bit of defense from its Elrig zone. Now it's limited; it can't grind the game out since it's a once per use type of thing. But you'll be shattering the opponent's defense while throwing up a few annoying options on your own. Let's get to the list. So here's our EX Aggro list. Again, we're not going a dream team here because there's too many things that the team itself gives you that lends itself to aggro, specifically EX Aggro. And also the fact that X3 wants red Signy. So since you're already like red, you are not really bringing in any extra colors that you need to worry about, so you just use what you have here. Luckily, Deus Recovery, Deus Shield, Machina Wing Slash, and Machina Smash do an amazing job at defending your life total and keeping you alive long enough that even if you manage to go to a late game and you haven't won yet, you still have a shot at crumpling a few walls and then getting in the last bits of damage, especially with things like Assassin. You're also going to be running Trigger of Victory, Death Deck, or Xenocluster, depending on your choice here. And this one, unlike Deus, is truly a 50-50. There's so much aggressive pressure that you probably don't need to run Death Deck as a as your second piece. You could probably run Xenocluster and get away with it fine. Plus, it'll make you feel better when you exceed away your Xenocluster because it wasn't useful in certain matchups anyways. After this, I just want you guys to take a look, and we'll dive into all the individual card choices a little bit. As always, the list that you see here is the real list. So if I made any mistakes in the visual list, it's just me copy pasting error. So use this one, copy it down, freeze it here, screenshot if you need to. This is what we're going to run with, and it's important to recognize that we're a little heavy on the ones, a little less heavy on the twos, and then very much not heavies on the threes. And you'll see a bunch of stuff at the bottom there in that fourth slot. I consider those extras or spells or flex spots. So while some of those are level threes, they're mostly just throwaway cards to help get you the end of the game victory. So you'll see more cards in that than normal, which means that, yes, this is a very quick aggro deck. Our curve is more on the top end and less on the bottom end. We're only running, for example, 9 level 3s that I consider are must-use level 3s. Let's talk about everything individually now. Okay, so the first one that we have here is Deus Recovery and Deus Shield. This assist is similar to Madoka in the fact that Madoka Float and Madoka Clap are draw cards and defensive specific Elrigs, and that's what this card does as well. Deus Shield mills yourself, but unlike other decks, you're less hurt by Deus Shield's milling. It's supposed to be a double-edged sword. You're supposed to prevent damage, but then also mill yourself, so eventually you refresh, and you take the damage anyways. It basically delays the damage that you would take. But with X, since you're trying to win the game so quickly, you probably won't mill yourself out. Like, you probably will either win or lose the game before that mill matters. So it's just a way to temporarily stop damage. And then your Deus Recovery is lets you find cards, right? You can't use it immediately. It's not necessarily a hand fixing, but it will enable you to win the game later down the line, since you can add no level cap, a red, and a black to your hand, which means that you're probably adding things like your level 3 that gets Assassin, or a Lancelot, or you might be bringing back just a black lane opener or something similar to that nature. It also has the ability that when you throw this to exceed cost, you can discard a card and you can bring back a black or red Signy from your trash to your hand, just to get you more inevitability to win this game. And it's free. It's tacked on for free. We always love free things in card games. Machina Wing Slash and Machina Smash are actually better here than they are in most decks, because you use the aggressiveness of it. You don't care that you are only hitting a level 1 with Machina Wing Slash. You're an aggro deck. You just want an early open lane. This causes that. It gives you the added benefit of being able to bring something back to your hand, but realistically in this deck, you actually could open up a lane with it and not care that it brings something back to your hand. It's just an added value. Wing Smash, on the other hand, again allows you to get something back from your trash, so you've got some late game inevitability from that. But more importantly, it's a level 2 that costs 1 enter and vanishes something on the opponent's field. So it's slightly defensive. It can help you live longer, but it opens up a lane for you to attack through on your turn, and that's fantastic. Moving right along here, we've got our level 1s. Now, granted, all the things that are in Japanese I'll discuss later, with the exception of the multicolor there. That's just a multicolor red and black. You want to have mostly red cards on your field, so realistically you are running the some amount of black, and the multicolor is the way to do it on the level 1. That's generally the trend moving forward. Yeah, we have a little bit of black here at the end here, but that could be the red version. No problem. The red version, basically, I can't remember what the name is, but it's the Sita that's coming out in this set. It's also 5,000. You could run it there as well, and you could run then maybe Hera's in the level 2 slot that I'm not running. But Hera's have some goodness over Lancelot, which is that it does it during attack phase, so it stops the Exida shutdowns as easily. I should mention that because this deck, if any deck is going to run Hera in order to avoid being shut down by Exida, it would be X wants to do it. So let's start at the front end though. Cargo Code Ride. This is a level 1 3,000 power. It's got a life burst, which is that you can pay red. If you do, you can vanish target Signy on your opponent's field with power 8,000 or less. That life burst is not great. You'd rather not pay for it. But the fact of the matter is that this allows you to, on enter, put target card from your opponent's enter zone into the trash, and if you do, they can enter charge 1. This turns on some of your other stuff, namely your level 2 here, and allows you to do things that say, if you've enter burned your opponent, you can do this extra stuff, which there's quite a few things that do that in this deck. But you should be thinking, well, it doesn't actually get rid of an enter. Why am I running it? And the answer is this punishes greedy decks. So if the opponent is running a, let's say Nova, right, an Uchu deck with Nova, then you should recognize that they have 6 green cards to use in order to run their Bang to Capo. So if you use this as just a way to color screw them off of green, it might come back later where they can't Bang to Capo, and then you get a free damage in. So that card is not really used to enter screw, it's used to color screw. There's also a variety of decks. We've been trained right now in Wixoss to be very greedy when it comes to using literally as much color as we want and not really sticking to the correct numbers in order to make sure we always have the color that we want. And Cargo Ride punishes those things. And that's another way that you can win, is by punishing those things. You can't allow your opponent to play at full capacity or full potential, and you can screw them that way. So aggro decks have disruption in them, but not necessarily the same disruption that you would see control decks or mid-range decks have. This another one here, this level 1, also does a similar job, but this one actually does enter screw them. The issue is it costs an enter in order to do it, right? At the beginning of your attack phase, target one of your opponent's enter zones that don't share a color with your opponent's center L-rig, and then you can pay 1. If you do, you can put it into the trash. I think this one's less powerful than Cargo, just because it costs something. And it's fine that it costs something, and you could actually switch those numbers up if you really wanted to. But I do think there's some importance to recognize that Cargo is 3,000, and this is 2,000. So it dies to more things, including Fragarash, as well as the negative 2,000 off of Deus's static ability. So it's not quite as good in the chump blocking world. Not that you're chump blocking a ton here, but I also think that, again, you're just trying to color screw with this deck. You're not necessarily trying to completely enter burn them. So that might be I like the distributions on it based on that. Again, you've got your 4 level 1 multicolors. This is how you're getting your red and getting some amount of black in order to trigger off your Sistel rigs. And then this one here is another version of the quote-unquote Sita Life Burst. You can target one of your opponent's Signies until end of turn it gets negative 8,000. The upside is it's a 5,000, right? So there's a bunch of 5,000s that have this ability now in white, green, red, and black now have different variations of this. But it's a 5,000, which means that it can't get remelled, it can't be fraggaroshed, those types of things. So it is pretty good. And it's probably the only black card you're interested in running in some capacity. It might not be 4. You might be able to go down in order to run your Heras if you'd like to. But moving along into our level 2s, I'm only running 2 of them here. Normally in these aggro decks I try to run 10 level 2s, and you still could, right? There's flex spots in like this area that you could probably cut to do it. But right now I'm just running these ones. Morax is very, very good, and the fact that you're going to almost always be able to turn on with your 6 ways to enter burn at level 1, you're always going to find a way to turn on your Morax, which will enter charge itself. And there's a cute combo between this lightly armed level 1 that costs 1 to enter burn, and the fact that this enter charges you 1, so it pays for it. Otherwise, it's just going to be a nice little add-on, and it's a free enter with your cargo. So that's good, but you're really playing it mostly for your for its life burst. The fact that you can tax your opponent to not vanish something is really quite good. It's basically you're forcing them to enter burn themselves at that point. If they do go for it, and if they don't go for it, then you get to take out anything, right? Like it doesn't have a requirement on level or requirement on power, which is unusual in red. So this will help against the early decks that are trying to stick out Signy that are buffer than what you can normally take out with your spells and your Lancelots. So it'll allow you to push some more damage in. It's a very swingy life burst, and the truth is, swingy life bursts are probably part of this game, and you want to lean into it. Lancelot again is a 4 of. You're always going to use it. It's quite strong. It punishes people for running these level 1s that are 5,000 power plus the multicolored level 1s. And it also snags. There's always going to be utility Signy on the field that do something for a certain amount of enter. Look, we've got 6 in this deck. So you're always going to find some amount of targets for it. Yes, the games that it's not so great in, it stinks, but that happens for pretty much every single card. Still probably one of the best cards that you could play in Wixoss, so I'd still play it. Moving up into our top end here, and again, this card here in the Japanese probably should be over in this section where it's basically just saying this is the extras, but I didn't put it there for some reason. We're running 3 Goal Wings Code Excel. It's strange to not run a full set of Team Signy, especially if you're running a team, right? Rose Quartz has sort of solidified that idea in a lot of red players' minds, but Wing Goal is actually not all that good. I think a lot of people think it's a lot better than it is. I mean, it says, it says Deus Ex Machina on it. It must be amazing, right? I don't think it's actually all that great. Its team ability is that at the beginning of your attack phase, if there are 2 or more cards in your opponent's enter zone, you can, and you discarded a card at some point this turn, the opponent chooses a card from their enter zone and puts it into the trash, right? This one leaves it to the opponent to decide what they're enter burning, but potentially could enter their stuff that are on color and basically will always hit. Its other ability, and this is the reason you'd play it, is that you can pay 3 enter, and this gains double crush until end of turn. So if you've played with Shub back in the day, in set 0, you also could pay 3 enter to gain double crush, and it was not ever fantastic. I think anyone who's played Nobunaga knows that 2 is a little expensive for double crush, especially red. So 3 is not utterly amazing. The difference between this and this is that at least with Nobunaga, um, it's a Rise Signy, so you need other specifically red Signy to play on top of this. Whereas Gullwing you don't. So I think the correct number for Gullwing is probably somewhere between 2 and 3. I'm not exactly sure where the right number is for that, but this gives you a benefit, which is that you're going to enter burn your opponent, and also gives you access to Double Crush. And the fact that you can give it specifically with your center Assassin, right, with your center's Exceed ability, Exceed, remove a piece and then things get Assassin, means that you can almost always guarantee a Double Crush damage from your opponent. Granted, you can also do that with Nobunaga. You can give it Assassin and that will be good. So I don't know. I think maybe the right options too, and I probably am a little heavy on this, but I wanted to test it, so I put down more. You get more Assassin here, though, in Kentucky, which is got Harmony against Harmony 1 black Elrig. And then at the beginning of, and you've got 2 black Elrigs, by the way, which this deck means that you can put out 2 Kentuckys in one turn, which is pretty unusual. But it has some cool abilities with souls, right? If there's a soul on it, then you can enter burn your opponent out more. Again, there's a lot of versions of a late game enter burn on your opponent, which is quite good. And the magic number is you've got to do enough enter burn that you can get over the fact that your opponent probably is running Xenocluster at this point. If you can enter burn more than 3, you're good. It also has the ability that you can pay red and black, and this Signy gains Assassin till end of turn. It's very, very good. You're always going to want to use this as a 4-of, especially because you can play 2 of them in one turn. So it'll always be very strong. There's some amount of recursion in this deck too, so you can bring back your Kentucky and Assassin all over again, and play, again, multiple a turn is very possible and is going to happen quite often with this deck. The last one is Steampunk Code Agents. Code Agents Steampunk. Let's see here if I got it. No, I don't, but I have it on an earlier slide, so let me just grab it. See, I found it. This one allows you, during your turn, basically whenever you use a soul ability or an exceed ability, you can pay 1 and give something negative 8,000. So it's just some more late game opening. But the important part here is that you actually can action down 2 of your level 2 upped Elrigs, and you can put this card from the trash into the field, which means that for some reason you start running out of a hand and you've got no more draw left and you're starting to run down low on gas, then Steampunk will be able to constantly help you lane fill with your 2 cards that you draw a turn. So you're not always completely dead to discard because of it. Let's get back to where we were. Here we are. All right, and let's talk about the card here. I think it's Alexandrite that I don't have here. Alexandrite. Natural... I don't know what that word is. The ability is auto. Whenever one of your other Signy gains Assassin, Lancer, or Double Crush, you can pay red and anything. If you do, until end of turn, the Signy gains that ability. So the cool thing with this is that you can use your level 3's X's ability to give 2 red cards Assassin, and then you can pay 2 and give this Assassin as well. So I actually really like this card in combination with the abilities that you can put out. This deck also, you can do it with the Kentucky as well, by using Kentucky to gain Assassin and then giving this Assassin as well. But you also have access to Double Crush. So one of the cool things here is if you somehow have a plethora of enter, which you're probably not going to have a plethora of enter, but if you do, you can go nuts with this and really start putting in a ton of keywords on your Signies to win late game. Come to think of it, I probably would cut 1 Gullwing and then add 1 more Alexandrite. But that's just me figuring out. You got to figure out Life Burst as well, because this has the Vanish target up to Life Burst as well as draw a card. You'd have to figure out the way around that one. Moving into our extras here, aside from Alexandrite, is Nobunaga. It's still solid Signy. It's still, you're going to put it on a red Signy. You're going to vanish something with 8,000 or less, so it's basically just another Burning Inferno, Deafening Inferno without a Life Burst. And then the ability to get Double Crush on it is good. Again, with Alexandria, you can copy that for 2 enter. 4 is much more reasonable than 5. and then running 2 Deafening Infernos. You're not running any. You could run Eternal Influence, but you're not, because Eternal Influence has an exceed cost, and while it's basically the same card, this has the upside of having at least some kind of life burst if you need to work on life burst counts. But like I said, that's one of those things. You could run Eternal Influence and then add another Alexandrite and probably cut a wing goal, something like that. Would probably be the way that I would go about it personally. But that is the aggro-tastic version of X. I think this deck is going to be a pretty big menace. If you already think Kirana is pretty dumb with how redundant its aggro nature is, then X is just another step in the right direction. And that's pretty natural. I mean, black is the second fastest color in Wixoss, so taking away the slowest color in that combo, which is blue, and basically putting in black instead, yes, you lose white, which is a weakness, by the way. White has a lot of coverage for red, like bouncing, that black does not give, because black does negative effects. But you end up with a very hyper aggro. I don't think you're going to play this mid-range ever. I don't think you should play this mid-range ever. I don't think the colors and the color pie of Wixoss enable that type of gameplay for X. But when you lean into the fact that it's just a super hyper aggro deck that has a little bit of it has very good assist lines to help keep you alive longer, you end up with a hyper aggro deck that doesn't just immediately fold to all the other random strats that are running around in Wixoss. And when you have a very redundant game plan, and you also have powerful cards that back it up, and a basically I win button in X, allowing for assassin and trigger a victory, which allows for you to get just a crush on its own plus death deck, which could enable 2 damage on its own. It's basically an I win button in terms of damage output. Then you end up with an incredibly strong deck. I think this will be tier 1. And I would start testing with it and against it pretty quickly. Luckily, a lot of these cards come from the starter deck, and a lot of these cards are actually commons as well, so you won't be hard pressed to put it together aside from a couple rares. So yeah. With that, guys, I hope you may always flip a life burst. Please let me know down below if you're excited for X, if you're dreading X, if you're excited to play against X, what you're planning on doing to defend yourself against X, everything and all of possible things that you could talk about Wixoss. I'd love to hear it.